friends, conformity, and purpose. And that's where William, he covered that in several other pages last class, and he left off in the top of page 96 there. Just back up a little bit. Oh, no. We'll start right at the top of page 96 there. And talking about this conformity, because we're still talking about friends, conformity, and purpose. And like we covered in last class, some of the things that he was talking about and getting to the nuts and bolts of it in regards to the STDs and the premarital sex and the risky sex and the behaviors that many people engage in an effort or a desire to conform, in a desire to fit in, doing it because, as the saying goes, well, everybody is doing it. That's really kind of a cop-out, kind of lazy answer, when you ask a person why did they do something. Well, everybody's doing it. I think everybody in this room here, and probably many people who are watching, if you grew up anytime in the 60s through the 90s, have heard a parent, mostly it was our mother, say, well, if so-and-so jumped off a bridge, would you jump off of it too? All right? I know I heard that many, many times. Right? Just because everybody is doing it doesn't make it right. Right? And this is where educating ourselves and not impulsively making a decision, but getting them to stop and think, what will be the outcome of me making this choice right now to do something because everybody else is doing it? The whole crowd could be running toward the direction of danger. They did a social experiment not that long ago that I remember seeing, and it just involved a person. They just kind of randomly selected people who, they walked down this, I think it was a street, and it was in a country in Europe somewhere. And people were walking down the street and then just minding their own business. And it was a crowd of, 20 or 30 people, who would come around the street corner and then, run like they were running from something. Now, this wasn't in Pamplona, Spain. Now, I would have just, if that was taking place, you got to suspect there's a bull following somewhere close behind. But they would just run down the street. And the person who was there in the street, they just turned around and started running too, right? Because they had now nothing was coming behind them, but it was just kind of a social experiment to see how quickly and how readily someone else would conform just because they see a crowd of people doing it. It was another one that day, and I think I mentioned this before, where it was a group of people and everybody who was in the elevator was in on it, and they were all standing facing the back of the elevator, right? You know how you walk into the elevator and most of the time you turn around and you face the door because the panel of numbers in the door is right there at the front. Well, everybody was facing the back of the elevator. Well, when the random unsuspecting person got on, they kind of looked around and, kind of played with their phone, and then they just slowly turned around and faced the back of the elevator too. They didn't want to feel like the oddball out, and they did it again in a different way where everybody was facing forward and then they all just turned around. And the majority of people who were on the elevator followed what everybody else was doing, not knowing why. They just did it. Why? Because they wanted to be accepted as normal, okay? And these were adults. They weren't teenagers, right? They weren't preteens. They were adults. So we can see how easily it is that desire to conform socially, it's a very powerful influence on other people. Now, on page 96 here, thankfully none of those things were negative, but sometimes things can be negative if we're not very careful. It says at the top of the page there, and we look at underneath that definition of conformity, it says the attitude of everybody is doing it is a form of negative conformity. All right, I'll read that again. The attitude of everybody is doing it. And I circled that and drew a line there and said that this is an uneducated, impulsive choice, right? Uneducated and impulsive choice. Remember what we talked about in the character traits of educated and the negative ones. The first one is uneducated. Impulsivity is, not considering the consequences before doing something. Well, uneducated, impulsive choices can lead to negative consequences. All right? And this is why we have to get our students whether they're children or adults, to really work this brain inside their head here and really stop and think before they make a decision. Because just the act of them stopping for 5 or 10 seconds to think about something before doing it, it can actually mean the difference between life and death to them, right? Or being labeled as someone who is irresponsible or untrustworthy or dangerous, right? And it can really change their life for the better or for the worse, depending on what they're involved in. And so we already know what conformity is, and if you just kind of hold your page there, let's look real quick back to page 67. This is a great reminder here to tell our students, because we see here in regards to conformity, and we talked about one of the most common forms of conformity is peer pressure, and it's when you feel like you must behave in a certain way in order for your friends to respect or see you as equal. Now, and this is the bottom paragraph in the first two paragraphs under who, me, conform. And then it says peer pressure can either be positive or negative. Now, it's always right to conform to something morally positive and beneficial. And there it says, conforming to positive moral standards that help to build positive character. Notice here it causes no harm to yourself or others, right? And that's one of the factors that we look at in determining whether a decision is right, whether a decision is positive, whether a decision is moral. Does it cause harm to ourselves, others, or the environment? We covered that in the first chapter of the character unit. Positive conformity encourages you to make moral choices. And then we'll read these two positive conformity and negative conformity parts here on page 67 and 68. And it says, positive conformity is when you, first point here, are encouraged to obey proper authority. That's one thing. Keep yourself and others safe. That's another point. And then lastly there, are encouraged to support and practice moral values. And if you flip over to 68 there, it shows here about negative conformity. And it says negative conformity is when you are encouraged to disobey a proper authority figure. We should only disobey authority who ask us to do wrong. Now, that wrong is not based on how we feel, or our opinion of what's right or wrong, but it's based on the standard that they've been taught. Will it bring harm to ourselves, others, or the environment, right? If a teacher was to tell you, to steal something from another student, is that wrong? Of course it's wrong, right? Because we know stealing is wrong. Stealing actually brings harm to others, right? Brings harm to the person who does the stealing as well. If a teacher told you to, if somebody hits you, hit them back, right? Two wrongs don't make a right. You're doing something that'll bring harm to yourself and others. Okay, so it's really kind of simple to go back to those basic concepts and take that into consideration before making a decision. Teachers are people too, and some people have been educated in the morals that bring about peace. Sadly, the majority of society has not been. Okay, and remember what we covered about bullying earlier in the unit there. Not everybody is being trained right now to develop a positive character. And some teachers are not trained to develop a positive character. So their responses to things that they perceive as unjust or an injustice or unjust, right? It would come out in a form of retaliation because that's what they know. That's what they grew up learning. That's what they practiced in their life. So that's what's going to come out of their mouth, right? Again, they can be trained as well to make better choices, but as a student of the peaceful solution, we have to take into consideration what we've already been taught and put those things into practice above the responses of others based on how they feel. We can't make decisions based on feelings. That's when they go wrong. And then lastly, it says negative conformity is when you compromise, second from last, negative conformity is when you compromise your safety or the safety of others. And lastly, negative conformity is when you go against moral values that you have set your mind to follow. You've set your mind to follow, which means if you've set your mind to follow it, that means you've had to be taught it to begin with, okay? So you can't go back with the excuse, I didn't know, everybody else was doing it, I wasn't thinking. Because we're always thinking, right? We're always thinking. Thoughts run in and out of our mind at the speed of light. Now, we can choose to ignore the morals, the moral values that we've been taught, and go based on how we feel, or we can choose to, suck it up, have some backbone and some grit, and say, yeah, man, oh, boy, man, I really like to do that, but, I know better. I know that doing that is going to bring harm. I know that doing that is against the rules. So I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to encourage my friends not to do it as well, right? Because, the reality of it is that, yeah, there are some things that are immoral that look fun to do, right? And children are very influenced by things that look fun to do. And when they can stand up for what's right, that's the mark of true integrity, right? And as teachers, when we see those types of things, we should congratulate them for it, because it does take a lot of courage and determination and backbone to stand up for what's right. Like it said, you have to stand up for what you've proven to be morally correct, or you will fall for anything. So it says here, that attitude of everybody is doing it is a form of negative conformity that stems from our need to fit in and be accepted as normal. And you notice that word normal is in apostrophes there. I looked up this word normal because I understand what normal is, and I understand that normal, it changes from time to time, and I'm sure one of the teachers has brought this forth before in the previous classes, but just to kind of refresh your minds here, the word normal means conforming to a standard, usual, like, oh, we usually do this. Yeah, I usually roll through stop signs. No big deal. Officer, right? Typical, all right, typical, or expected, right? Well, if you want to come in here, we expect you to give us $5, or we expect you to, give us something, to join our club or whatever it is, right? Things that are expected. So notice though, it's conforming to a standard. And remember what we're talking about here in regards to the definition of the word conformity. To agree with and obey customs and standards of others that we just covered here at the top of the page. So normal doesn't indicate necessarily correct. Normal can be right or it can be wrong. In the case of it being right, well, yeah, if we see money on the floor, it's normal for us to pick it up and take it to the office or to the lost and found. That would be positive. That would be correct, right? Okay. Well, if somebody's in my way while I'm walking down the hall, that's normal. It's normal for me to just push them out of the way. That's immoral. That's incorrect, right? And so you see, this is something that can be something that's a standard in people's minds, right? Not necessarily based on moral principles or values. So we have to keep that in mind. Just because something is normal doesn't mean it's positive, doesn't mean it's moral, doesn't mean it's correct. But being educated would help to determine whether that particular standard or typical, being typical, or something that's expected or usual is positive or negative. It says negative conformity can derail you from your purpose, and in addition to the pressure to engage in premarital sex, there are many different ways that people take part in negative conformity. Many different ways people take part in negative conformity. I wanted to show you something here, just to kind of go along with our ideology of normality here, and I hope I can put this up here. Hopefully, there we go. Now these are brothers. It's not the people that I wanted to show you, but I wanted to kind of show you the difference in what is normal. Okay, and in this example here, I'm showing you dress attire. Okay, now this was kind of common dress or attire that one would see for people that were average dress in the 1930s, right? And you see how everybody, the men, they kind of have the, the hat, the headwear on, and some, puppy ties and vest and the suits and things like that. And these are one's a younger man, and I think one might be the father or something like that. But this was kind of when you pull up, 1930s era of dress. This is a lot of what you see. Now, there are people who dress down a little bit more because people aren't going to go work in the fields wearing a three-piece suit and so forth. But just on an average, maybe office worker type person, this is what you see. Now, again, I'm not doing this for nostalgia's sake. I'm just kind of showing you the difference of what is normal and how times have changed. This here is from the 1970s. All right. Now, some of us have grew up in that time period. Thankfully, we're not seeing any flywing collars right now. But you can see how times have kind of changed, right? Now, these gentlemen in the 1970s, they look, as they probably would have said, pretty snazzy, at that time period. But they're still, fairly modestly dressed and ready to, I guess, cut a rug. Now, this here is in the 90s. Now, we probably have more people that might be watching who might have grew up in that era of the 90s. And you can kind of see now this is probably more in the fall time, where these guys are more in dress or sweaters, but they're in their stonewashed jeans and, all their different outfits. And it looks like they're possibly even doing a little beatboxing right there because that was real popular in the 90s. Now, again, this is just an example of in dress, right, and styles that change and people's desire to fit in and conform to particular, because dress is a standard, right? Dress is a standard that people will change and alter in order to fit in. It's like when, we used to, back in the 90s too, there was a popular rapper called MC Hammer, right? And he wore a certain type of parachute pants that a lot of people wanted to wear, when they went out to the clubs and things like that. I never wore anything like that, but it was really popular, and he made it popular, through the way he danced and, performed on stage. Now, these guys are in the 2020s, 2021, and this is what's not popular for everybody, but this is kind of when you pull up traditional styles of dress for men in the the mid 2000s or 2020, 2021, and you can see kind of the jeans got a little bit skinnier and shorter, and shirts get a little bit tighter. I guess I don't know, makes it easier to get through water. I'm not really sure what. Anyway, but styles change over a period of time, and so people's idea of normal changes with the times, right? And even in dress, we have to be very careful because certain forms of dress can put a person at risk for being perceived or looked at in a certain way, right? And we covered some of those things as well in the previous classes, right? A person who has respect for themselves is going to dress in a modest way. They're not going to dress in a way that exposes themselves to other people, both men and women, right? They have to be very careful, very mindful of that, especially when you go to a job interview, right? The interviewer is looking for somebody who has, by their dress, they can tell if they have respect for themselves. They can also tell if they have respect for their employer that they're coming to get a job for. Okay, if you go to a job in sweatpants and an A-frame shirt, your employer's not going to think very much of you. Okay, they're going to think you don't care, and they're going to think that reflects in your character and will reflect in the way that you work at the company. So more than likely, they will not hire you. So let's look at the next paragraph there. It says, the need to please. Notice here, the need to please friends is certainly one of the most powerful reasons why people conform. The need to please friends is certainly one of the most powerful reasons why people conform. There was another article here I was going to show you here. Kind of went with let's just back up a little bit because I know we read it. I just want to read it one more time there. That last paragraph before we get to the need to please friends. It says, in addition to the pressure to engage in premarital sex, there are many different ways that people take part in negative conformity. And, if you look up recreational drugs, because we talk about that here as well, um, that's another thing that's sadly pretty big in our society, and we're still dealing with the opioid crisis throughout the United States and many other places in the world. But recreational drugs, it's very big right now, and maybe in another class we can go over a little bit more of these things. But currently, I just looked this up here. Currently, the drugs most commonly used by teens are, now remember they consider teens from ages 15 through 24. Even though a 24-year-old is not a teen, they still classify them in that young, kind of immature age group. So does the insurance agency as well. The most commonly used drugs used by teens are marijuana, cocaine, stimulants, painkillers, and prescription drugs. That spice and K2, that's that synthetic marijuana, heroin, crystal meth, MDMA, hallucinogens, DXM, and inhalants. Okay, these are the most commonly used drugs by teens, right? And of course, this ties into many different ways that people partake in negative conformity. Because people are kind of pressured into these things, and they, hey, listen, such and such is here doing it. You like her, man? She's doing it. Or you like him? He's here doing it. Or if you're my friend, you won't let me get high alone, right? And so teens have a way of influencing people to do things that otherwise they wouldn't do if they were by themselves. And if you look up this word, so I looked up this word recreational here, and because tying into recreational drugs, and the origin Latin is recreare, and notice here it means to create again. All right, to create again or renew. Also in the sense of mental or spiritual consolation. And that word consolation is a person or thing providing comfort to a person who has suffered. All right, and that could be positive or negative. Right, when somebody is engaging in recreational drug use, right, they're trying to usually they're wanting to escape the troubles in life, right? I only use cocaine when I'm feeling down. I only smoke a little marijuana when just to take the edge off a little bit, just to kind of lighten the load a little bit, right? Looking for consolation or comfort in something that has a negative effect on their mind and their decision-making process, because their mind is required to make decisions, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with consolation. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel better when you're down, but there is something wrong with choosing a means that takes away or diminishes from your mental faculties, your ability to make a positive choice. And this is where a true friend will come into play, because they will be able to counsel you. They'd be able to say, hey, listen, I know it's difficult, but let's look at what we can do to make the situation better. All right, let's find some positive options here, or whatever it might be. Or, hey, what I do when I'm stressed out is I go for a jog, right? I go do a little bit of exercise, that kind of, gets my blood flowing and loosens me up a little bit. Well, that's beneficial. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it's healthy for the heart and the mind. It increases oxygenation. And I believe 20 minutes of exercise is enough to boost the immune system for about 6 hours. If you get your heart beating and everything, your pulse going, it boosts the effectiveness of your immune system for about 6 hours. And so, just for your notes there, and we won't cover it because we don't have very much time, but another thing that people engage in is also risky driving practices. All right, this is something that if you look up the National Highway and Transportation Safety Administration, they've done extensive research on teen drivers and the rate of incidents or accidents with teen drivers and how they increase with the amount of people in the vehicle that are under the age of 25 years old. The more teens, young people that are in the car, the greater their risk of being involved in an accident, right? And the numbers actually get pretty high. As that, I think they figured it up to about 4 people, because it's the need to fit in. It's the need to show off. And it's not, and they even said in the articles, it's not always that the other passengers are in the car are necessarily telling them to do something risky. It's just their influence around them, right? And every one of us has been a teen driver and, had that desire to kind of, show off, I mean, it didn't matter what type of vehicle you had. You could have had a Ford Pinto. It was the fastest Ford Pinto on the street, right? And you'd race this guy from one light to the next just to show him that your car could do it, all 64 horsepower, right? But those are risk-taking behaviors, okay? And it becomes even more risky the more people you have in the vehicle. So now here in the, let's start again so we don't miss anything. It says, the need to please friends is certainly one of the most powerful reasons why people conform. For example, how do you spend your time when you are with your friends? Studies indicate that a popular pastime for adolescents between the ages of 12 to 15 is hanging out at the mall, talking about and laughing at people as they walk by. Many of the teens surveyed said that they would not feel comfortable doing this if they were by themselves. But with friends, they set aside their sense of right from wrong because, here's this excuse again, everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is doing it. Okay? Remember what we said there, that's an excuse to not practice self-control and just kind of follow the crowd and doing what feels good, right? But of course, those things that feel that way usually lead to consequences because choices. Keep in mind that every choice you make, including how you spend your time and what you conform to, can affect your ability to develop a positive character. And to go with that, there is an article. Let's see if I can find it really quick. We only have a few minutes here. And it was kind of interesting because the title of this article is What You Do in Your Spare Time Determines Your Success. And one of the things that we ask a lot of our students when we go to different schools is, are you successful? Do you feel that you are achieving success in life? Are you getting what you want out of life? Well, in order to accomplish those things, you must understand your purpose and you must have goals. Well, this writer here shows that the average person, every single one of us, has 24 hours a day. But most people spend their day with 10 hours that is spent on working and traveling to work, 8 hours are spent sleeping and resting, 2 hours are spent on personal hygiene, cleaning, and doing personal stuff. Probably less for us men. 2 hours are spent on eating and preparing food. Not that we don't wash up, we don't take 2 hours to do so. And 2 hours are our standard spare time. And it shows here what we do with those precious 2 hours will determine or can determine our success with our dreams or accomplishing our goals. It says, Inc. and Business Insider wrote about what do successful people do in their spare time, and here is the list. One here, they say that they exercise because, it kind of helps them to remain disciplined and dealing with the demanding work life and the stresses and so forth. Exercise kind of helps. Exercise does profit a little. I don't mean spend 8 hours at the gym, but a little bit does help. Or just being in a job that, enables you to exercise to some degree. Sitting in the chair is the worst thing you can do all day. Not healthy for the body. And then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 things really tie into what we've been talking about in the last few lessons of the Peaceful Solution. Number 2 is they read. They read. Reading is a lifelong skill, and successful people never stop reading new books. They never stop finding ways to increase their storehouse of knowledge. They always are seeking to educate themselves. to become smarter, to become more educated at things, to know more about the world around them, to see how they can improve themselves and society. And what we're getting here from this character education program is doing that very thing. Remember, wise people seek to be educated. Lazy people seek to be entertained. All right? Number 3, they master something. Becoming extraordinary at something or being an expert in a particular field is important and will lead to more success in the future. You want to be an expert in the peaceful solution? You want to be an expert in developing a positive character and being a teacher? You want to be an expert in solving the world's problems? Perfect what you're learning here in this course, and you will be. Number 4, they take classes. What's everybody doing here right now? Right? You're taking classes so that you can read and educate and become perfect in a particular skill. Education shouldn't stop at college and shouldn't be restricted to institutions, and it's not with what we're learning here. And then number 5 here says they network. Successful people are willing to step outside their comfort zones in an effort to meet new people. And we talked about that in regards to interacting with others and acceptance. We've covered that in this book itself, giving people the opportunity to learn about them, learn about their culture, right? That starts that process of networking. Number 6 here is they volunteer. Volunteering, no matter where or how you do it, is beneficial for you and your community. Now, again, as was covered in the previous classes, you want to, you have a purpose or a goal in life, and there's something that you want to do. Well, get permission. Get permission in the thing that you're wanting to do, and see how best to proceed. So you're not just stepping out on your own and doing something that could actually cause harm. Okay, and then the 7th thing that says they spend their time with friends and family, and you want to make sure that that time that's spent with friends and family is positive and something that is used to build and sustain or help you to maintain your positive moral character. So let me finish this last paragraph here. It says, there are many other types of activities that are done with friends as a means of conforming and fitting in that are negative and have the potential to influence you to make poor choices. Keep in mind that every choice you make, including how you spend your time and what you conform to, can affect your ability to develop a positive character. If you do not carefully consider what you are conforming to and how you spend your free time, alone or with friends, you could jeopardize your ability to achieve your purpose by making choices that are irresponsible, selfish, and disrespectful. Negative conformity can waste your time and your future. And remember, the time that's wasted as a result of negative conformity, it can never be gotten back again. So we want to encourage our students to spend their time wisely, taking a few seconds or minutes if need be, or even stepping away and consulting with a trusted adult, before they make a decision can, like I said before, make a world of difference, to their success. So we're going to stop right there on page 96, and we'll pick up with identifying conformity in the next class, which will be 10/27, 2021 at 5:30 Central Standard Time. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.